You can integrate still photography with your video project just as easily as you can integrate any other video clips. And in fact, you can apply many of the same filters and treatments to your stills as you can to your video. Let's have a look. Inside of the folder Photo Demos, open Demo Project A. As you can see, this is a close-up video of the raspberries boiling in the pot. What I want to do is integrate a still photograph of the raspberries before they went into the pot into this project. To access your still photos, simply click on the Photos tab in Final Cut Pro. From here, you have access to your aperture and your iPhoto library. In your sample content, there is a folder called Photography, and inside that, a single JPEG called Red Raspberries. If you haven't already imported that, why don't you go ahead and do that now? You can import it either into Aperture or iPhoto. You may need to relaunch Final Cut Pro to see the still photo show up in here. Once that's done, go ahead and locate your Red Raspberries photo in either your iPhoto or Aperture library. Once you've located it, adding it to your project is the same as adding any other type of video. You can click and drag it onto the timeline, and you can drag it to the end of the timeline, on top of existing video to attach it, or you can insert it before any other clip. Once it's in place, it plays back just like any other piece of video, except of course that it isn't moving. However, we may want to apply some type of animation to this photo. There's something very common called a Ken Burns effect, where you have a still image that you can pan and zoom and even rotate into to make it appear like video. Let's go ahead and do that with this picture here. What I want to do is start off with it zoomed in a little bit tighter, and then I'll zoom in even tighter still, and I'll also rotate a little bit as we go. To do all of that, simply click on the transform icon in the bottom left corner of the canvas. This will open up the transform tools, and as you can see, you now have handles on the edge of your footage. You can also rotate or reposition the clip by simply clicking and dragging on it within the canvas. To scale it, just grab the corner here and drag it out. Now notice, it's quite easy to get a little bit too big in here, and suddenly you can no longer see the edges of the frame, which is going to make it a little bit hard to scale this back down again. But no fear, the easiest way to handle this is to simply zoom out of the canvas. To do that, just tap Command- on your keyboard a couple of times. There's the edges. Now I'm going to go ahead and scale that back down to a more reasonable size, and reposition this shot so it fills the frame. Perfect. Now that I have it in place, to reset my canvas the way it was before, simply go to the Zoom menu here and choose Fit. What I want to do is have this still image change over time. I want it to start the way it is now, but then I want Final Cut to zoom into the shot, and I also want it to rotate a little bit. To do that, we have to use something called keyframes. Notice down here in the timeline that the playhead is currently at the beginning of the project. In fact, it's on the first frame of this still image. What I need to do is add a keyframe to that point, and to do that, I simply click on the Add Keyframe icon. That tells Final Cut Pro that this photograph needs to be in this exact position for this frame. Now what I can do is add as many other keyframes as I want along the timeline, and on each keyframe, I can change the image, I can scale it, rotate it, or even more, and Final Cut Pro will automatically animate between the two keyframes. Let's do it. I'll take the playhead and drag it to the end of this shot. Now notice, however, that when I do that, the playhead has snapped to the next shot in the timeline. I don't actually want it there. I want the playhead to be on the last frame of the previous clip, so I just need to back up one single frame. To do that, I could tap on the left arrow key on the keyboard, or I could simply click on the previous keyframe button up here on the canvas. Now that I've selected the last frame of that shot, I need to add another keyframe. I'll go ahead and click on here to add that keyframe, and now I can scale and rotate the shot how I like. Notice again it's hard to get to the handles here. The corner is hidden out of view. But instead of zooming out of the project this time, instead I'm going to open up the Inspector palette. This gives me full access to all the different controls in here, including the transform controls. If I tap on Show, you'll see that I have access to the position controls, rotation, scale, and anchor. I want to scale it up, so I'll take the scale slider and simply click and drag on that to make the shot a little bit bigger, effectively zooming into it. I can reposition it from here as well, or of course I can simply click on the canvas and drag the shot like so. I'd also like to rotate it a little bit. You'll see that we have a rotation slider here, or I can simply click on the shot and this little rotation handle comes up. With that selected, I can just click it and drag it to rotate the shot. Let's see what it looks like now. Great. Now notice it's going to just cut into the next shot, the shot of the raspberries in the pot. Let's go ahead and add a transition between them. Not only can you add transitions between video clips, but you can add them between stills as well. Just like you do with video, simply drag and drop it onto the timeline and play it back. Incorporating stills in your project is a great way to add depth to your videos, especially if you're working with some old still photographs that you've had scanned that simply couldn't exist in today's world of video. You can apply color adjustments to your still photographs in Final Cut Pro the same as you can for video. Open up Demo Project A in the Photo Demos folder. If you don't already have the still image of the raspberries sitting here before the video, go ahead and add it in. To do that, just go to the Photos tab, and from the iPhoto menu, grab your red raspberry shot and drag it onto the timeline. You'll notice in here that the color of the raspberries in the still image doesn't quite match the color in the video. We could try and fix that manually, or we can take advantage of the automated tools in Final Cut Pro and see if Final Cut will do it for us. To do this, select the still image, and then go to the Magic Wand tool here and choose Match Color. This will open up the Match Color dialog. What this allows me to do is match the current frame to any other frame on the timeline or even in the browser. All I need to do is click on the point where I want to match, and Final Cut Pro automatically tries to match the color. And as you can see here, it did a pretty good job. Now as we play that back, the still image looks much more like the video. But you still may want to change that a little bit more. So go ahead back to that still image, and click on the eye for Inspector to access the full color controls. Just like with video, you can now access complete color correction tools. So for example, this shot's a little bit oversaturated, I think. So I'll go to the saturation slider, and let's just take the midtones down just a touch. I also want to go to the exposure slider and brighten it up a little bit. I don't quite like how dark it's gotten. There we go. I think that looks a lot better. Now when I play it back, it transitions beautifully into the video. When it's time to fine-tune your project, you'll find that Final Cut Pro has several different tools available to you. For this demo, go to the Color Demos folder and open Demo Project B. We're not doing any color work in this project, however this is a perfect timeline to show the editing tools that I want you to see next. This project contains two clips on the timeline, a shot from inside of the refrigerator, and then a shot from outside. It looks like it's shot with two different cameras. However, the truth is that this was shot with one camera in two separate takes, then edited together to look like one single take. This is a very effective way of telling a story. However, you do have to get the edit just right between these 2 points, or else it's not going to look good. So let's take a look at the tools that we have available here. The easiest and most immediate way to make the edit is to simply click and drag on the end of one clip, or the beginning of the next one, to change its edit point. This is called refining the in point and the out point of your clips. You can see that if I change the edit, and I don't get it quite right, let's say for example that I have the door already closed on the first shot, but then still open on the second, you can see that it is not an effective edit. It just doesn't look right. So you need to go through here and refine the shot until you get it looking just perfect. Now, this is one way to do it. However, if you want a little bit more control, you can access something called the Precision Editor. To get there, simply double-click on an edit point between two clips. You notice that the timeline changes to show you two different clips at once. Your top clip is the first shot on the timeline, and the bottom one is the second shot. Notice as well that when you're in this view, you can see not only the current edit, but you can also see the unused footage. As I skim the mouse along this clip, you'll see that I can see the footage that I'm not using here, and on the bottom, I can see the footage that I'm not using here. Just as before, I can now click and drag on the end point of one clip and the out point of the other to change their edit point. However, there is another view available that you may want to enable. This is something that'll be very welcome to more advanced editors and give you a view that you may be a little bit more used to seeing. If you go to the Final Cut Pro menu and choose Preferences, then select the Editing tab, you'll see under here an option under Timeline that reads Show Detailed Trimming Feedback. If you enable that, now when you make an edit, you'll see not only the point that you're currently editing, but you also see the first frame of the next clip. Or if I edit the endpoint of the next clip, I'll see that one moving and the last frame of the clip behind it. This can be very useful when trying to align things up perfectly. So again, while you're in this view, you can change the out point of one shot or the end point of another. But there's another way that you can edit this as well. Notice that there's a handlebar between the two clips. If I click and drag on that, I'll be able to edit both clips simultaneously. This is a great way to check that you have things perfectly aligned. And we can see here that I don't. On the top clip, the door is just about closed, and if I go one more frame, the door is now closed. However, if we look at the bottom clip, you'll see that the door isn't quite there yet. So now let's go down to the bottom frame and move that until the door is closed. Perfect. Now as I edit between them, they line up perfectly. However, that may not be the best point for the edit. So let's go ahead and grab this handle here and drag that back. We can try putting the edit point just about here, so the door is not quite closed yet when the camera switches. And we can try it again after the door is closed. Clearly, the first one looks better. Let's go ahead and drag that edit point back and play it again. And from here, you can always refine it some more. If you decide that you do want to have a little bit of a difference in there, let's say having that door just a little bit farther closed, you can do that as well. You may have noticed that what I see playing back in the viewer changes depending on where I have the mouse. If I put the mouse over this top clip and I tap on the spacebar, it's going to play the entire duration of that clip only. If I put the playhead on the clip on the bottom and tap the spacebar, again I'm playing back just that clip. However, if I put the mouse just between these two clips and tap the spacebar again, we're going to see the completed edit. Once you're done with your precision edit, you can simply close the precision editor, which will bring you back to your normal view. And again, from here at any point, you can continue making your edits. Also, notice now that we've enabled that extra preference, if I click and drag on the timeline here, I'm still going to get that advanced editing view. Getting that edit perfect in Final Cut Pro is easier than ever. These tools make this job as accurate and as easy as they've ever been. There are times when shooting your project that you couldn't quite get the camera angle that you wanted, or maybe not get as close as you would have liked. Final Cut Pro offers you several different tools to help manipulate a shot after you've made it. For this presentation, open up the Sound Demos folder and open Demo Project C. We're not actually doing any sound editing in this demo, however, this is a perfect clip to work with. Let's take a look at what we've got.
Hello, and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Alenka, and I would love to share a special recipe with you today.
As you can see, the camera was locked off on a tripod. It didn't zoom, and it didn't move. But maybe we want to change that. Maybe I want to simulate moving into the shot, a push, which would simulate kind of a zoom, or perhaps the camera itself moving. There are 3 different types of tools that we have access to within Final Cut Pro to make these types of changes. When you select a clip on the timeline, you can choose to open up either your transform tools, your cropping tools, or your distortion tools. The transform tool allows us to move the shot wherever we want on the canvas. It also allows us to rotate by simply clicking and dragging on this little handle here. You could also resize it. Just grab a corner and scale it however you like. If you want to reset all of this work, open up the inspector, locate your transform tools, and simply click on the curved arrow to reset the settings. The next option you have here is the crop tool. The crop tool has 3 different modes: a trimming mode, which literally just cuts a piece of the footage off, the cropping mode, which crops into a shot, and then there's the Ken Burns mode, which crops into a shot but over time. It's quite clever, so let's take a look at this one. You'll see that you have 2 different boxes on screen right now: a green box that's your starting point, and a red box that is your ending point. You can reposition either one of these boxes however you like. What this means is that Final Cut Pro will start the shot at the green box, and then slowly zoom in or push into the shot, ending at the red box. You can preview this at any time by simply tapping the play button here.
And welcome to my kitchen. My name is Alenka, and I would love to share a special recipe with you today.
As you can see, this can be a very effective way to edit. When you're done with this, just click on the Done button. Again, if you'd like to reset that, open the inspector, locate your crop tools, and click on Reset. Finally, you also have Distort tools. The Distort tool can be quite handy if you have a shot that wasn't quite angled straight in the first place. Maybe you couldn't get the camera in the right spot, or for whatever reason, your shot just feels a little bit distorted. You may find it easier to work with if you zoom out of the shot a little bit. Just Command- or Command+ will make that easy to do. You can grab the corner to reposition or even distort the shot however you like in here. As you can see, by distorting it, you could easily straighten out some angles that may have not been quite right in the first place. Just make sure that you make the shot big enough so that you don't have any black edges around it. And again, anytime you want to reset this, just tap on the eye for the inspector and you can reset the shot. Notice that while doing that, I didn't just distort it, I also moved it with the transform tool. So I'm going to have to reset that as well. As you can see, there's all kinds of tools in Final Cut Pro that allow you to manipulate the shot however you need. There may be times when you're editing a project where you want to try something out, but you're not quite sure if you're going to want to keep those changes. Instead of having to undo steps, it might be easier to duplicate your project and work from the copy. To duplicate a project, simply locate any project in your browser. For example, under Color Demos, you can select Demo B, right-click on that, and choose Duplicate Project. You'll see that the keyboard shortcut for that is simply Command D. You have several different options available when you duplicate a project. First of all, you can choose where to store it. It's currently set to go to my internal hard drive. However, if you had external hard drives attached, those would be listed here as well. You can choose to duplicate just the project itself, which will take up the least amount of disk space possible. You could also choose to duplicate the project and the referenced events. So any events that are referenced in this project, that's all the media over here, will also get duplicated. This is handy if you want to put an entire project on an external hard drive to move to another location, in which case you want to make sure that you have all the media that goes along with it. You could also choose to duplicate the project and just the used clips. This will make your copy much smaller than the previous option because only the used clips will be copied over. However, this also means that you won't have all the extra footage to continue editing. If you do this, you'll need to rename your project as well. Finally, you can choose to include the render files or not. If you deselect that, your project size will be quite a bit smaller, but everything will have to be re-rendered once you open it up again. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate just the project and include the render files. When I click OK, you'll see that with this option, it takes just a couple of moments, and now I have Demo Project B with the annotation FCP1 after it. Keyframes are an advanced and powerful way to take total control of your project in Final Cut Pro. Keyframes can be applied to a variety of places, including your transform controls. Let's take a look. Inside the Advanced Demos folder, open Demo Project A. Inside of that, you'll see that we have two clips on the timeline, one on top of another. On the top, we have the shot from inside of the fridge, and underneath that, we have the shot from outside. The first thing I want to do is build a very simple picture-in-picture display. To do that, simply select the clip on the top, and select the transform tools, and shrink it down. You may find that it's easier to control these tools if you zoom out of the canvas a little bit. To do that, just tap Command- on your keyboard. Now with this selected, it's a little bit easier to go ahead and make this a bit smaller and position it wherever I like. Now if I play this back, of course we have the picture-in-picture. But maybe I want to animate that and have this frame of video start off full screen and then shrink down to sit in the corner here. To do that, we'll need to use keyframes. I want to add a keyframe in two places. I want to add it at the beginning, where the frame is going to start, and at the end, where I want it to end. Move the playhead back to the beginning of the shot, and I'll reposition this so that it fills up the frame again. You could also simply go to the Inspector tool and click the Reset button to reset it automatically. To add a keyframe, just click in the top left corner here, the little diamond with the plus icon. That'll add a keyframe to that frame of video. Then position your playhead wherever you like, let's say right about there, and add another keyframe. Now I can change the parameters of any quality on either keyframe, and Final Cut Pro will automatically transform between them. Let's go ahead and make this shot a little bit smaller, and put it up in the corner again just as we did before. But notice now that you see this red line between the 2 points, showing the transformation over time. If I take the playhead back and hit play again, you'll see that that video is now shrinking over time in there. If you'd like, you can see your keyframes directly on the timeline. At the top left corner of each clip, there's a pull-down menu that allows you access to a variety of controls. The one you're looking for is called Show Video Animation. And this will show all the different animation tools that we have for that particular video clip. You can see the keyframes already added to transform. And if I want to reposition a keyframe, I can do that by simply clicking and dragging on the keyframe here. By moving the ending keyframe to this point in the timeline, I've now just sped up that animation. So the zoom is going to happen a lot quicker. You can gain even more control over your keyframes by opening the inspector and then looking for the transform controls that you've just been manipulating. In this case, transform. If I click on show, you'll see all the different parameters in here that are available under the transform control. And you'll also notice that each one of these can be keyframed individually. In this case, I've been working mostly with position. If I click on this little drop-down menu, you'll see that I can add a new keyframe in here, or I can also jump back to the previous keyframe, or if there's another one in front of me, jump to the next one. If I select previous keyframe, you'll see that the playhead has moved to that keyframe on the timeline. Now I could go back in here and manipulate these settings if I wanted to, or of course I could go in, reset the parameter, or even delete that keyframe entirely. Keyframing is an incredibly powerful tool in Final Cut Pro. It's definitely a more advanced feature, but it does allow you to do things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do in your project.